Just an example of some of the amazing harmony that you hear in Wagner's Parsifal score, in which he really worked out in its richest form, I think, his particular version of kind of polyphonic harmony. And it's an amazing, amazing opera. I've been involved in reducing it for chamber orchestra, which basically means that I've had to completely alter Wagner's scoring so that it works for chamber orchestra, but in such a way, this was my intention, and I think it really has worked, to reduce it in such a way that even experts, if they're in the concert hall and listening to it, they will not be able to detect the difference, because the timbral conception of the score is the same as Wagner originally intended it. The only detectable difference is simply that the volume of sound isn't quite so massive. But it's pretty big in Inverness Cathedral. I can guarantee that no one is going to be disappointed. So if you live in Scotland, if you're near Inverness or anywhere in that region, please come along. We've already had one performance on Wednesday, but we've got one more on Sunday at 4 p.m, so don't miss it. And for obvious reasons, I've not had time to record a full video for today, but I'm going to give you instead an excerpt from a video that we filmed on Good Friday, and it was mainly about Bach's St. Matthew Passion, but here's the bit about Wagner's Parsifal.
And there's one other Good Friday masterpiece I want to mention, and that is Wagner's Parsifal. Wagner wrote Parsifal in the 1870s, so about 150 years after Bach's Passions. And this is not the work of a conventional believer at all. For Wagner, I think the Christian story was essentially crucial symbols that represent things that tell us about ourselves. And it's his last opera. He composed it specifically for performance at the Bayreuth Festival Theatre, which he himself had constructed. And the work was meant to be performed as a sort of sacred play, almost like his equivalent of a kind of passion play, and that's very much what was in his mind, on Good Friday. So that was the whole conception. At the end of his life, I think Wagner very much had that sense, and it's a sense that we all have had when we've encountered the Bach Passions, is the thing I said at the beginning, that you've got a couple amazing music with this incredible story, where you're moving towards the cross, and the music is taking you there. So it's a kind of pilgrimage. And when music does this, something happens. Something happens that's kind of marvellous. A while ago, in one of the shorts, I said that one of the greatest concerts of my life was going to hear Messiaen's 20 Regards sur l'Enfant Jésus, the 20 Visions of the Infant Jesus, which also is a kind of pilgrimage. So there's something a bit special happens when you align a musical experience, a long-range musical experience, to a sort of spiritual journey, because you take an audience into something important. And if you're a good enough composer, if you can match real compositional depth with that depth of narrative, then you're going to end up with something incredible. And Wagner knew that. At the end of his life, he knew that this was the journey he needed to go on. And Parsifal is a piece I know very well because I've made a chamber orchestra version, which is going to be premiered. The whole opera is going to be premiered in Inverness in May. I guess this is by way of a kind of promotion, because in a moment I'm going to play a tiny bit of that version. But the whole opera begins with this wonderful theme that Wagner invented, almost like plain chant. You hear it as an orchestral unison, and you hear it in strings, low violins but also high cellos, and the melody is written in such a way that you have no idea what the rhythm is, but it reaches this high point there on the G. It has this slightly tragic fall in C minor, and then this lovely kind of hopeful tread upwards in A flat major, and then ends on C, on the median, because we're in A flat major here. So The melody itself goes on a kind of spiritual journey. It reaches a kind of cross at the centre. I think that's what this sort of is. It's like he's sketching out a cross shape at the centre of the melody. And you journey towards that apex, and then you have a kind of resurrection in that. I mean, this is incredible symbolism going on. This is the opening melody of the work. And that journey is also, to some extent, the journey of the opera, which I won't go into. And he orchestrates it in this beautiful way. So you have the strings, but then he mixes in clarinets and bassoons, and then at the intense centre of the melody brings in a cor anglais as well. And then Wagner does something wonderful, which is that he allows the orchestra to meditate on this theme, and he does it in the most wonderful way. He sets up this fantastic polymetric pulse in the woodwinds, so they're all pulsing away in this dun 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 dun, kind of these slightly irregular throbbing patterns. The upper strings are playing these arpeggiated cross string patterns. And the melody, the Grundthema, the great theme that I've just played you, is then played on the trumpet, but supported by a pair of oboes. So you get that lovely glow of the trumpet plus the oboes. It gives you that wonderful, almost halo-like glowing sound. Also, the strings are divided between some strings playing arpeggios and others playing the melody with the trumpets. You get this wonderful kind of floating orchestration, absolutely extraordinary. There's a marvellous story about the conductor Carlos Kleiber conducting a rehearsal of Tristan and Isolde, in which the entire rehearsal was focused just on the opening cellos and the chord, and then the resolution, which isn't really a resolution, but it's just left there, and then the silence. So I don't know, there's probably an element of myth to this, that the entire rehearsal was taken up with that, but a good portion of the rehearsal was taken up with that. And then, of course, the performance just flowed out of the intensity with which they'd considered that opening.